Hello, everyone. So let me start with an apology. I'm apologizing the for my silence for weeks now. Okay, I know that at the beginning of this, the series I've been running for I think it's almost a month now. I did promise that I would do a weekly upload. Okay, and the focus being the IGCSE First Language English, be it the 0500 or the 0990. Okay. I've been able to upload two videos, okay, and the feedback have been encouraging and insightful. Okay. However, I got very busy, busier than I've always been, and we've been doing some project and all of that. So, you know, that seemed to divert my attention. So let me just apologize for that and say that the videos are back and by God's grace, okay, it would be sustained. All right. So today we're looking at how to write a summary within the context of the IGCSE First Language. I have about three PowerPoints I'll be sharing in the course of the lesson. Okay, and I also have an IGCSE question, okay, which would serve as a study material and which would be the basis for considering a sample response, okay, that you could model your own response after. So let me begin by sharing my screen with you, and we'll go into the first, you know, PowerPoint. Um, I I I often I often emphasize, that it's important for students, okay, for any learner, okay, of the language. It's so important for the learner to understand the objectives, of the language. And I'm going to apply the same to summary writing. If you do know the objectives of summary writing, you are likely, okay, to be unable to make a success at writing it. Okay, so this PowerPoint would get us familiar with what a summary is as a concept in English, but specifically within the context of the IGCSE First Language English. All right, so basically, what is a summary? Okay, now this is my definition, and I like using this definition a lot because it is loaded with meaning. I oftentimes tell my students, okay, that whenever they think of a summary, okay, they should think of a plant, of a flower. All right, now for those who have gardens, okay, you would agree with me that there are moments that you step into your garden, okay, to prune the flowers, the plants in your garden. Now, why do we prune? Pruning entails cutting off excess leaves, cutting off excess foliage. All right, because definitely plants grow, flowers grow, okay, and they get to a time when we have to prune them, okay, because you want the flowers to take a certain shape, okay, and you then prune. Now, when you prune, what are you trying to do? You are cutting off excess leaves, excess leaves, okay, so your plants could look neat, okay, and so your garden could look tidy and kept. Now, the same imagery, okay, is applicable to a summary. When you're writing a summary, what you're doing is that you're focusing strictly on relevant point, okay, and you are ignoring excess material. You are ignoring details, you are ignoring examples, you are ignoring opinions, comments, and extra pieces of information. Okay, you are focusing strictly, okay, on the point, okay, and fact relevant to the summary question. Now, that is why that I tell my student that a summary is a straight to the point overview, okay, of important point or fact of a text. Okay. All right. So basically, that's just what a summary is. Now, there are four elements that make up a summary, and these four elements, okay, if we could, gain a mastery of these four elements, okay, then we are good to go as far as summary writing within the context of the IGCSE is concerned. And what are those four items? The first is relevant point. Okay, your summary response will not make sense within the context of the IGCSE and even anywhere in the world, okay, if it does not contain the point, okay, that an examiner considers relevant to the question. So the first thing that every good student must do is that the student must first identify the focus of the summary task. What's the focus? Every summary question has its focus. So you must identify the focus of the summary task. After identifying the focus, you must then use the focus of the task, okay, to screen the passage for relevant points. Okay, so the first thing is focus identification. The second thing is then using the focus of the task of the summary question, okay, to screen your passage, the text given to you for relevant points. And I oftentimes tell students that within the context of the IGCSE, okay, students are advised to, to present at least 12 points. Okay, fine. Oftentimes it's 10 relevant points. If you have 10 relevant points, you can be sure, okay, that you have 10 marks, okay, which is awarded for content. All right. However, I tell my student that it is safe to identify 12 relevant points. Should there be some mistakes, at least you can be sure that even if a point is inaccurate, all right, or 2 points, you can be sure that you still have about 10 accurate points. Okay, so the first item of a summary is what? Relevant point. You must ensure that you identify the focus of the summary question. Okay, once you get the focus, now read the text, okay, with the focus of the summary task in view. Okay, and once you get the focus, what do? You then begin to use the focus to screen the text for relevant point. And don't forget, 12 relevant points. Okay, and the second point is your topic sentence. That's the second thing. The first element is your relevant point. The second is the topic sentence. The third is the complex sentence. And the last is the discourse marker. So I have spoken about relevant point. Okay, so we would move on to the topic sentence. But let me say this, okay? So I've given an example here in the PowerPoint. Okay, so let's say, talking about relevant points, let's say that a text, okay, you come across a text in your booklet and the text focuses on life in Australia. All right, now that is the focus of the text, life in Australia. However, the summary question says you should summarize tourism in Australia. Now, tourism in Australia is embedded in life in Australia. So what that suggests is that in your summary question, okay, you wouldn't focus on the entirety of life in Australia. You would only limit the point, okay? The points you identify must be relevant only to the focus of the summary task. And based on what we have here, the focus is on tourism in Australia, not life in Australia. All right, so this is very important, okay? So it's important for every learner to always identify the focus of a summary task. Once you've identified the focus, you then use the focus to screen the text. Oftentimes, texts have very general approach, okay? A summary question, a summary task is what limits the approach, okay? So a summary task has its own specific point of focus, and every learner must be able to identify that and follow the focus. The next thing is your topic sentence. Your topic sentence. The topic sentence of a paragraph, all right? A topic sentence is more or less the first sentence of a paragraph. And that sentence does just one job. And the singular job is that that sentence tells the reader what the focus of the paragraph is. Now, you should note that in the IGCSE, your summary is expected to be written in just one paragraph. Always ensure that you don't exceed one paragraph in your summary and you're writing in 120 words. 120 words of your own. Okay, so I tell my students often that the first thing they must begin a summary task with is a topic sentence. And the topic sentence is that sentence that reveals the focus of what they are doing. So how do you then craft a topic sentence for your summary? I tell students that the best way to do that is to craft the topic sentence from the summary question. So let's say the question says, according to text B, what are the advantages of tourism in Australia? According to text B, what are the advantages of tourism in Australia? Now, that's the question. Okay, so your topic sentence must derive from the focus of the question. The question focuses on the advantages of tourism in Australia. So it means that your topic sentence could be crafted like this. You could say, there are numerous advantages of tourism in Australia. You could say that. Or you could say, or you could begin by saying, by writing, one of the advantages of tourism in Australia is blah, blah, blah. All right, so basically, every summary you write must begin with a topic sentence. Now, you might think that, oh, I have just 120 words. Why should I begin with a topic sentence? Beginning with a topic sentence would rob, some words off my writing list. No, because if you actually know how to use your sentences correctly, especially the complex sentence, you would know that having a topic beginning your summary response with a topic sentence, okay, wouldn't rob you of some words. It won't reduce your word count. Rather, it would give the examiner the impression that you are a competent writer. Okay, and you know exactly what is required. Okay, so please, it's so important for everybody to to see the topic sentence as a vital and integral part, okay, of your summary. Now, the next thing is the complex sentence. Okay, I tell my students that the moment they cannot write, the moment they cannot construct complex sentences, okay, then they they are not seriously getting ready to to attempt a summary question. Okay, because the essence, one of the objectives of a summary task, one of the objectives of a summary, okay, is to express relevant points, however, in the shortest way possible. So brevity is a vital part of a summary. And for you to be brief, all right, you need a complex sentence. I tell my students that there are only two sentence types that they require in a summary. The first is the complex sentence, which is key. It's actually core, it's a core part of your summary response, or the compound complex. Okay. However, the compound complex sentence is a type of sentence that many teenagers, find difficult to construct. Okay. So I oftentimes advise stick to the complex sentence. When you stick to a complex sentence, it is easier for you to express all of the points in the shortest manner, shortest way possible. And what makes a complex sentence? A complex sentence is a sentence that contains at least two clauses. One clause is an independent clause, while the second clause is a dependent or subordinate clause. Okay, and those two clauses are linked. Those two clauses are connected by a subordinating conjunction. So for you to know your complex sentence, then it means you have to revise your sentence types. You must know how the complex sentence differs from the simple sentence. Okay, to also master the complex sentence, you must also know what your connectives are, most especially your conjunctions. You must know the difference between your subordinating conjunction and your coordinating conjunction. If you don't know the difference, then you might not be able to construct a complex sentence. Because to have a complex sentence, you simply have to think of subordinating conjunctions and how to see how you could use at least a subordinating conjunction to connect two clauses, to connect one clause that is dependent, that is subordinate, that is reliant, okay, to another clause which is independent, which is the main clause, okay, and which is a clause that can stand on its own and make complete sense. So it's important for you to to gain mastery of your summary. Then it's so important, okay, for you to learn how to construct a complex sentence. Okay, now lastly, all right, I mean, in respect of the PowerPoint here, discourse markers. I like distinguishing discourse markers from conjunctions. Excuse me, all right. Now, most people assume that discourse markers are conjunctions. I would rather tag discourse markers connectives, or best put, I call them conjunctive adverbs, okay, rather than call them conjunctions. They are conjunctions in a way because they connect, they link. However, discourse markers aren't used, okay, the way conjunctions are deployed. Conjunctions are utilized to connect words, phrases, or clauses. Discourse markers are utilized to connect sentences and paragraphs. So the essence of using the discourse marker is to show the connection between two or more sentences or two or more paragraphs, okay? And why must you know what discourse markers are, okay, and utilize them in your summary, okay? It's just for one thing. Discourse markers give your summary response fluency, coherence, and logicality, because the ideas that each paragraph communicates, okay, the ideas would be connected. So discourse markers help connect the ideas in our individual sentences, okay? And, discourse markers have a way of making a paragraph, complete, all right, and making it fluently um, um, intelligible. All right. So those are the four elements, okay, that I think are relevant to your summary, most especially within the context of IGCSE. The first is that you must be able to identify relevant points. And I did say that at least you must have 12 relevant points. Okay. And secondly, you must begin every summary with the topic sentence, a sentence that expresses the focus of your summary task. And then I also did say that the topics, your summary requires you to utilize complex sentences. That's the way you achieve brevity. And why complex sentences? Because at least a complex sentence contains two clauses, one independent, one dependent. So it means that by using the complex sentence, you can be sure to have 2 points expressed in one sentence. So if you have been able to identify 12 relevant points, I beg your pardon, sorry. If you've been able to identify 12 relevant points, then that suggests that you would have in total, you could have about 6 sentences, okay, because you are using complex sentences, okay. Now that means that you could connect and express 2 points, okay, in one complex sentence. All right, so in all, so that way, by using complex sentence, you achieve brevity. All right, so what are the things you shouldn't do in your summary? What are the don'ts of a summary? The first thing, avoid repetitions. The essence of a summary is not to emphasize anything. The essence is just to state and move on. Now, that doesn't mean that you are listening. You're not listening. You should express all of this in a single whole paragraph. Okay, so avoid repetitions. Okay, in the IGCSE, you must understand that writers have a way, okay, of helping you understand specific points. And one of the ways they do that is by repeating one point. And repetition is achieved when you say one thing in two, three different ways. Sometimes you say one thing and you want to lay emphasis on it. And so you don't say it again as you exactly as you said it the first time. However, you use an example. So let's say I'm trying to express how mean I can be as a teacher. All right. So I've said something like Mr. Digun is a mean teacher. All right. Now, and I also still want to emphasize that. Okay, so I could say that, that he encourages corporal punishment. Okay, so to many students, that could be, mind you, I don't encourage corporal punishment. I don't believe in it. Okay, but I'm just using that as an example. Okay, so he encourages or raises an advocacy for corporal punishment. Now, that is an example, laying emphasis on why I am me. All right. So we must understand now those such examples must not be repeated in your summary. So repetition, don't say one thing in different ways. Express it once and then move on. You must avoid illustrations. Don't use stories. Don't. It is summary. The essence is to express, straight to the point fact, okay, in the shortest way possible. Okay. And then you must avoid example. Like I said, just say, oh, this man is mean. You don't need to cite an example of his meanness. Don't. Okay. Then you also avoid extra information, whether they are minor or major. Just go straight. Tell us what the information is. Don't give us details. Don't give us details about the color of something, the height, the size, the shape. No, how long it took. Just tell us what that thing. Oh, an event occurred. It was a sad event. Okay. It was a sad event. Don't give us details about what happened. Okay. Descriptions. In your summary, you're not describing anything. It is straight to the point response. Okay, so you must take out, you might come across descriptions in the text, but you must know that they are not part, of your work. Personal comment and opinions. Don't tell us what you think. Simply give us relevant point from the text. Okay, oh, somebody is stupid because the person did a particular thing, did it somehow. No, saying somebody is stupid is a point, it's an opinion, it's a comment. I beg your pardon, it's a comment and opinion. Okay, that should not be found in your summary. Direct quotes and speeches are prohibited. Okay, they shouldn't be accommodated because the essence of the summary is to express the point in your own words. And expressing it in your own words is just a way of evaluating to what extent you understand the pieces of information in the text. So if you actually understand the pieces of information in the text, then you would, be able to express the piece of information in your own words. And lastly, imagery. Don't give us metaphors and similes. Remember, there's no need for flowery language. Okay, so go straight to the point, stick to the facts, nothing more. All right. So I think this, okay, has been helpful, okay, to us. All right, I think this has been helpful to us. Okay, so I'm moving on to um you know helping us understand how to write a summary within the context of IGCSE. How do you write a summary? How do you write a summary? Every piece of writing, okay, every genre, every sub-genre of writing has its unique style. All right. And the summary itself, okay, is a non-fictional, form of writing. It's non-fiction. All right. And it has its unique style. So how do you write a summary? The first thing is having identified your point, and I said relevant point. Having identified your point, identifying point means as you read the text, you are annotating, you are underlining, you are bracketing, you are putting a star somewhere just to note the point. Okay, so let's assume that you have been able to annotate the text and you have identified at least 12 relevant points. All right. What do? I tell my students that you don't express or present the point in the way they appear in the text. You don't follow the progression of the text, the ideas in the text. What you do is you follow logic. Okay, so you must identify 12 points and then you must try to rearrange them. Remember, you're identifying 12 points so you know exactly what you're writing in your summary. Okay, and because you need to utilize complex sentences all through your summary response, then you cannot utilize complex sentences if you have not first paired up your point. Okay, I could have 12 points, and the first point might not logically flow with the second point. It's possible that point number one only flows logically with point number 4 or 5. So it means that in the first complex sentence I will only have point one, I would only express point one and point 5. It's so possible that point 12, only connects logically with point 8. So that's why the first thing you must do is get the focus of the summary task, identify 12 relevant points, and before you start writing, pair them up. You're allowed to use a pencil, okay, to do all of that. Pair them up, have a mind map so that you know that in every complex sentence I write, I would feature 2 points. Okay, pair them up, pair up the point. All right, so let's use this as an example. All right, so um, there's a question here, which is what tips are given to help tombstoners avoid injury? So you have to summarize the tips that the writer of the text, the passage gives in order to help tombstoners avoid injury. So, you know, let's see how the points are. So now, so let's say that you have read the text, okay, and you've been able to identify 12 points. But worst case scenario, you've been able to identify 10 relevant points. You have to keep your body straight when diving. You have to check that cliff edge is secure. You have to wear a knife. You have to check for riptides, blah, blah, blah. Wear um, goggles when diving, blah, blah, blah. So you've been able to identify 10 relevant points. You have the STEM point. Now, how do you pair up the point? Okay, are you mandated? Are you under any obligation to follow the progression the way the points are expressed in the text? No. Rather, you are meant to pair them up. Okay, so I could say that keep body straight when diving. I could say that point number two, I could say that point number two is relevant and it's logically you can pair point number two and point number 6 together. So you could say that before diving, ensure your body is straightly positioned when diving into water, okay, as well as being certain that there are no rocks in the water, okay. So I've been able to create a complex sentence, okay, by logically connecting point 2 and 6, okay. So you don't need to follow how the ideas of point are arranged or expressed in the text. Don't follow the progression. List out the point so that you're sure that you have your 10 to 12 relevant points and try to pair them up logically, all right. So let's think about it. So think, okay. So how did you pair up your points? Okay, did you do a before the dive and after the dive? Okay, whichever you chose, okay, you must remember that you have to do all that in one paragraph. Okay, and it's very possible. You simply have to utilize discourse markers, okay, adequately and relevantly, just to ensure that though you seem to have divided the points in your paragraph, they still collocate. All right. So I beg your pardon, please, sorry. Um, so there are several important things to recollect about the summary style. So what are the things you should leave out? What are the things you shouldn't include in your summary? Opinions. Okay, don't give opinions. And then in your summary, there's no need for comments. There's no need for introduction. There's no need for a conclusion. Rather than have an introductory sentence, rather use a topic sentence. So the topic sentence is what begins a summary, and then don't add details. All right. So remember that you have to include your topic sentence. Okay. You have to include your topic sentence. You're also to utilize complex sentences, okay? And then, you're also to utilize discourse markers. All right, so I'm giving you an example here. We want to, this is more or less like a sample response, something that answers the summary task. What should tombstoners do when diving? All right, so I'm going to read this and then I'll be pointing out opinions, those things that shouldn't be in your work. I'll point them out. All right, so let me just read this. I'm going to write about advice to give tombstoners. So this part is more or less like okay, all right. Um, okay, so this part, all right. So this part is more or less like the first sentence here is like your topic sentence. Okay. I'm going to write about advice to give tombstoners, or there are a few pieces of advice to give tombstoners. Okay, so that's like the topic sentence. Now, I think tombstoners are mad. Now, that is wrong because, if for those that are conversant with verbs, you would know that we have definite verbs and we have indefinite verbs. When you see indefinite verbs smack of opinions. So when somebody says, I think, I believe, it seems, it appears, those are indefinite verbs, and we utilize such verbs to express opinion. So whenever I'm reading, maybe an extract or whatever it is, and then I see such verbs, think, believe, seems, appear, feels, blah, blah, blah. I know that whatever comes after that verb is an opinion. Whoever is writing is not sure of it. So I'm careful, okay? I don't run with it. So I think tipstoners are mad. That is an opinion. That should not be expressed in a summary. But if they are going to do it, then I think the least they can do is to check the alluring cliffs online first and see if they have a bad safety record. But if they're going to do it, then I think the least they can do. Who says checking you know, the cliff online, checking whether they have bad safety record? Who says, those two things are the least they can do? So you're bringing in your opinion. Okay, so opinions must be avoided. And then it says, as if, and see whether they have a bad safety record. And then there's a semicolon here, either injuries, cliff erosions, and sea issues. Now, either injuries, cliff erosions, and sea issues are examples. You already wrote and see whether they have a bad safety record. That is a point. That is enough. All right. You don't need to give examples of the bad safety record. Don't need to tell us injuries, cliff erosions, and see those examples. So the moment you express a point in your summary, don't give examples of that point. A summary does not establish any point. It simply states the point. Okay. The thing is, if they don't wear a knife and goggles, then they can't cut themselves free of any rope or weeds they might land in. If there is any, now those are 2 points. You see that if there is any trouble, which is stupid, that is a comment. It's not allowed, which is stupid. That's a comment. That's not part. Even if you feel that's stupid, you shouldn't express it in your summary because that's not the goal of a summary. If there is any trouble, which is stupid, that's a comment must be avoided. And if they haven't booked lifeguards or friends to keep a lookout, then they are really on their own. No, then they are really on their own is an opinion. Don't express that because that's not the essence of the summary. If they've got injured by hitting a rock, then they are really on their own if they've got injured by hitting rocks or the bottom. This would be my advice. There's no point saying this would be your advice. No. So you don't start a summary with an introductory sentence and you don't wrap up a summary with a concluding sentence. You don't do that. Rather than begin with an introduction, start with a topic sentence, okay, and wrap up your summary not with a concluding statement, all right, but with the last complex sentence of your summary, which contains like the last 2 points of your summary, okay? All right, let's move on. All right, so that's that. Now let's go to the practical part of this. Okay, I have an IGCSE text, okay, which I downloaded and which I'll be sharing with everybody, and I'll just show us how these things are done. All right, So here's the question. I often tell my students that the first thing to do when you're writing a summary, write the question, read the question first, read the question. And I tell my students that there are three types of summary questions in IGCSE First Language. The first type is we have single focus questions, meaning summary questions that have only one point of focus. And that's the example we just read. What are the tips tombstoners um, um, can be given? That has only one point of focus. But here, the summary question here has 2 points of focus. The first point is advantages of taking a seasonal job. The second point is disadvantages. So I oftentimes call this a double barrel question. A double barrel question is a question that has 2 points of focus. All right. The last type is a triple barrel. A triple barrel, I haven't seen an IGCSE question that has more than three, points of focus. I haven't. So the third type is the triple barrel, meaning there are 3 points of focus. Okay, three things you have to look out for. Now, whether you come across a double barrel or single barrel, ensure that you give equal attention. So when it's a double barrel, ensure that you have equal amount of points. Now, that could be difficult sometimes. So let's say you have about 12 points. Ensure that at least you identify 5 points for one part of the question, one half of the question, and about 7 for the other half. So you have 12. If you're able to identify less than 12, so you've been able to identify 10 relevant points, you might not find 5 each. You could identify 4 for one half of the question, and then identify 6 for the other half of the summary task. All right, so we know the focus here. I don't need to read the text before I know the focus. I know that I know that the text is likely to be about seasonal jobs. All right. However, I must read the text so that I can identify the advantages and disadvantages of taking a seasonal job. And I tell my student that when you answer a summary task, you don't read the question once, you actually read twice. The first reading is skimming in order to get the gist of the text. The second reading is what scanning, okay, in order to identify specific detail. All right. So let's read the passage. This is the passage here. It's a short one. Summary text are oftentimes text B in first language English, and they are not as long as text A, but especially they're not as long as text C. All right. So I'll just read through this quickly, and then we would identify the point together, and that will lead us to the last segment of the lesson. Okay. So it says, looking for a part-time job or full-time career, have you considered seasonal work? You could find work at a resort during the tourist season, think skiing or camping, or pick berries or other produce. You could work with kids at summer camps or help out at a local festival. There are seasonal jobs to fit every different season. But here's the question. Are they worth it? Perhaps. For instance, let's say you are looking for work as a retail manager, but you don't have much experience. 2 months working as a cashier could fill that gap. Just make sure that you are thoughtful in how you present your seasonal job on your resume. Most seasonal jobs don't require much previous knowledge and suit any talent level. They also tend to be low paying. If you're currently out of work, there's minimal downside. If you're looking for little extra spending cash to save up for a trip, it could also be a good move. However, if you're working on your career, you might need to consider whether or not the extra hours make sense. Do you have a family who needs your time? Are you already exhausted from your job or studies? Low pay can be a deal breaker, and you probably be working a tough schedule. Holiday retail seasonal help as well as tourist-based jobs tend to be heaviest on evenings and weekends. Don't expect to get hired for a seasonal job and get some good detailed training before you start. Due to the short nature of the season, whatever season it may be, you can expect to get a quick how-to speech at best. For this reason, choose a seasonal job where you already have some rudimentary knowledge. If your goal is to find out about the business, you may have to learn on the job. Whatever, whatever, seasonal jobs offer opportunities. It's your choice, but hurry. Those seasonal jobs won't last long. Okay. So let's remind ourselves of a question. It says, according to text B, what are the advantages and disadvantages of taking seasonal jobs? So remember, here we have this is a double barrel question. This is a double barrel question. Okay, what makes a double barrel question? Because it has 2 points of focus. The first focus is advantages. The second focus is disadvantages, of taking a seasonal job. So basically, there are 2 points of focus. Now, let's turn to the text. I tell my students that they are unlikely to come across an IGCSE passage, okay, that would offer them all 10, 12 points explicitly. They're unlikely to come across such a passage because within the context of the IGCSE, the summary question does not only test your writing skills, but also your reading skills. Okay. So to what extent can you read and understand what you read? And the best way to demonstrate, okay, the extent to which you understand what you have read is being able to identify points, whether the points are explicitly stated or the points are implicitly stated. So I tell my students that when they read a text, they should take their minds off the possibility of finding all 10 or 12 points on the pages of the text. No, they would find at best maybe about 5 to 6 points. Sometimes the explicit points are as low as 4, but you can be sure that most times they are between 4 and 5. I don't think they're oftentimes 7 because the examiner would also test whether you can read in between the lines. Okay. So oftentimes explicit points are between 4 to 6. Okay. So it means that the remaining 6, 5, 4, 3 points are implicit and you have a responsibility to dig them out. So let's see whether we can do that here. Let's see whether we can do that here. So I would color advantages in yellow, and then disadvantages would be red. Okay, so let's start with advantages. And I told you that there are explicit point, there are implicit point. Now, what I tell my students to do is read through the text, identify all explicit points first of all. Those ones are quite easy to come back. So explicit point. When you've identified explicit points, so let's say I've been able to identify 5 explicit points, and I want to identify 12 points because Mr. Adigun says so. So I've identified 5. Let's say I've identified 6, or let's say I've been able to identify 7 explicit points. But Mr. Adigun wants me to identify 12 points in all. So it means that there are 5, outstanding points which are not explicit. They are implicit. So I must read the text again. This time, I might not be reading the paragraphs where I got the explicit point from. I might focus more on the paragraphs I read and had the impression that there were no points. There are no points there. Those are the paragraphs I'll focus on. And as I read them, I'll think, oh, is there a point here? Is there something the writer is saying indirectly? All right, so let's go on. So let's see, I'll color the advantages in yellow. I'll color these disadvantages in red, and then we'll go on. All right, so let's see advantages and disadvantages. Let's see. So I'm reading this time to identify relevant points. Looking for a part-time job or full-time career, have you considered seasonal work? Now, this is the first, paragraph of this text, okay? And I oftentimes tell my students that, every paragraph must be read. And, having identified explicit points, you must think about every paragraph you come across. So look at this. Looking for a part-time job or full-time career, have you considered seasonal job? One of the things I see in this first paragraph is an implicit point. If the writer begins with a rhetorical question, looking for a part-time job or full-time career, have you considered seasonal job? One point, is obvious here. However, it's not explicitly, it's not clearly stated, it's not directly stated. Rather, it is stated indirectly in a subtle manner. It is implicit. And the point is that it says looking for a part-time job or full-time career, have you considered seasonal work? So the point here is that seasonal work could be part-time or full-time. That's the first point I see here. But this point is not obvious. It's not explicit. It is implicit. Have you considered seasonal job? So it means that one of the advantages, an advantage of a seasonal work or an advantage of seasonal jobs is that they could be on a full-time basis or they could be, on part-time basis. All right, so that's the first. But this point is not explicit, it's implicit. You have to read in between the lines. You have to think. Let's move on to the second paragraph. You could find work at a resort during the tourist season, think skiing or camping, or pick berries or other produce. You could work with kids at summer camps or help out at a local festival. There are seasonal jobs to fit every different season. So what I see in the second paragraph, I see 2 points, two advantages of seasonal work. I see a point that is implicit and I see a point that is obvious. I hope you're also seeing the implicit, but so could somebody just think which point in this paragraph is the implicit? Think, 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 think. All right, okay, so just to save time, all right, look at this. There's an implicit point here because the writer says you could find work at a resort, or you could pick berries or other, agricultural produce, or you could work with kids, or you could help at a local festival. Now, those are more or less like four, four options of seasonal work. Now, the point is not that there are four options. The point is that there are a variety of seasonal jobs. Okay. So this simply suggests that there are varieties of seasonal jobs. That is what this tells you. A seasonal job there's the resort work option, there's the agricultural or harvesting option, there's the working with kids at summer camp option, there's also with helping at a local festival option. So this simply points to one point. So the working with kids at summer camp, the local festival, the picking berries, the resort work, are all examples of the varieties of options, the varieties that seasonal job offers, the variety it offers, okay? But, these examples of it. So this is an implicit point. If you don't really think about the examples, you won't know exactly what they point out. And the third point is that there are seasonal jobs to fit every different season, meaning there are different types of seasonal jobs. But most importantly, these seasonal jobs can be custom made, meaning they are relevant, okay, for every season. I mean that, in every type of season, you find a type of seasonal job that is relevant to that season. So depending on you, depending on your availability, in your own maybe vacation season, you could find there's always a job, okay, that you can do in that season, depending on your schedule. All right, so that is also another point. So you see that actually in all, have been able to identify 3 points already. The first is an implicit, the second is equally an implicit, the third is an explicit question. So you see that I've been able to identify 3 points, okay? But those 3 points didn't come easily, okay? They came by reading in between the lines. It's only 1 point that came easy, all right, because it's an explicit point. But the first 2 points, okay, were implicit. Okay, so you must learn as you read to read in between the lines. There are like more or less like about 3 types of readings we do. We read on the line, okay, we read in between the line, and we read beyond the line. Reading on the line means reading and just getting the literal meaning. Reading in between the line means getting hidden meaning, implicit meaning. But when you read beyond the line, you then begin to make extensions. You then begin to do effect. Oh, this word, what is the effect? What are the possible reasons, possible interpretations? All right, let's move on. But here's the question. Are they worth it? Perhaps. For instance, let's say you are looking for work as a retail manager, but you don't have much experience. 2 months working as a cashier could fill that gap. Just make sure that you are thoughtful in how you present your seasonal job on your resume. So, there's another question about the worthwhileness, permit me to use the word, of seasonal work. And the writer is saying, are they worth it? However, the writer answers the question in a very in a very uncertain manner. But by the time the writer goes on, the writer gives us instances. The writer says that, if you're looking for work as a retail manager and you don't have much experience, 2 months on a seasonal job as a cashier could help you. So it means that an advantage of seasonal job is that they don't require experience. So seasonal jobs don't require experience. That's the fourth advantage. So you see that so far, we've been identifying advantages. Though when we get to paragraphs that have the disadvantages, we would also point them out. So, so you see that actually You then have in another fourth point that seasonal jobs don't require experience. Okay. Now, there's another point here. Just make sure that you are thoughtful in how you present your seasonal job on your resume. Now, this comes across more or less as both an advantage and disadvantage, but I would choose to tag this as a disadvantage. Okay. Make sure here as a disadvantage, make sure that you are thoughtful in how you present your seasonal job on your resume. The disadvantage of seasonal job based on this has an implicit meaning, okay, is that, seasonal jobs might not be recognized. Okay. So even when you do seasonal jobs and you gain the experience, all right, depending on how you present it on your CV, if you don't present it, tactfully on your resume, all right, if it appears as a seasonal job, your your prospective employer might not take you serious. Okay, so you could be disqualified because your experience will not count, because they think it's a seasonal work. So that's like the first disadvantage, have been able to identify. So far we've identified four advantages, one disadvantage. Okay, and three out of the four are implicit, one is explicit, and then the very first disadvantage is implicit. The next paragraph, most seasonal jobs don't require much previous knowledge and suit any talent level. So those 2 points. So we also see here that we see another point here. Okay, they don't require previous knowledge and anybody can do it. So that's an advantage. We said it does not require experience. Okay, so it means you can gain experience from it. Another advantage is that any talent level can do it. Okay, so you don't have to be advanced at anything. Okay, just everybody's like qualified to participate in seasonal jobs. That's an advantage. They also tend to be low paying. Now, this is an explicit disadvantage. So seasonal jobs are low paying. Seasonal jobs pay ridiculous amount. Okay, seasonal jobs are exploit seasonal jobs are exploitative. Okay, so they are low pay. All right, let's move on. If you're currently out of work, there's minimal downside. If you're looking for a little extra spending cash to save up for a trip, it could be also a good move. All right, I think that is an advantage. That although they are low paying, okay, they could be a little extra source of cash. All right. So now you see that even based on the way I express this point, you see that this disadvantage and disadvantage here could go together in one paragraph. So I could pair them up and say, although seasonal jobs are low paying, meaning although now in my own words, remember your summary must be in your own words. So I could say, although seasonal jobs pay stipend, okay, stipend is low, or although seasonal jobs have meager reward or meager pay, all right, they could be a source of extra money, or they could be a source of extra stipend for personal agenda. So something like that. Let's move on. However, if you're working on your career, you might need to consider whether or not the extra hours make sense. Do you have a family who needs your time? That's a rhetorical question. Are you already exhausted from your job or studies? Low pay can be a deal breaker, and you probably be working a tough schedule. So we see another disadvantage there, okay, that seasonal jobs could give you a tough schedule, a tight schedule. Holiday, retail, seasonal help, as well as tourist-based jobs tend to be heaviest on evenings and weekends. So we see another disadvantage here that, heaviest on weekends here, meaning, evenings and weekends are more or less like opportunities to spend time with family. So if seasonal jobs take that away, your evenings and your weekends, now that means that seasonal jobs could have some effect on family. So seasonal jobs could have some effect on social relationships. So you see that we've been able to identify, at least four relevant disadvantages. Okay, let's move on. Don't expect to get hired for a seasonal job and get some good detailed training before you start. Due to the short nature of the season, you can expect a quick how to speak. So basically, seasonal jobs don't train adequately. So lack of lack of thorough training, okay, is a disadvantage of seasonal jobs. So you simply learn on the job. All right. And then you have for this reason, choose a seasonal job where you already have some rudimentary knowledge. If your goal is to find out about the business, you may have to learn on the job. So it's still part of experience. Seasonal job offers opportunity to gain experience while working on the job. Okay. So that's you learn on the job. I think this is an advantage, not a disadvantage, an opportunity to possibility of learning on the job. So this offers you possibility of, of gaining experience. Whatever, seasonal jobs offer opportunity. It's your choice, but hurry, those seasonal jobs won't last long. So this is a disadvantage. Seasonal jobs don't last long. So basically, in my own words, seasonal jobs have a short time frame. All right, so important that you apply early. Now, look at this. I've been able to show you how to, use the focus of your summary task to screen your question, the text, and have done that by using a summary task that is a double barrel question. So you see in your summary, there are not only explicit points, okay, there are also implicit points, and you must learn to reflect not only the explicit point, but also the implicit point. Many students, all right, fall into the error of, in the process of expressing implicit point, they end up incorporating details, repetition, and all that. We mustn't do that. So that's why we must practice and practice, okay, until we are good at what we do. All right, now I have expressed this in a paragraph. Okay, so let me share a PowerPoint with us. I've done that. I've been able to express this in a paragraph. I developed the response myself, actually, without checking the mark scheme. Okay, just understand, what students go through. So this is the passage. Um, Here's the question. Here are, some of the points. Okay, now here is my sample response. And then look at what I did. I told everybody, like I told you that 4 elements are important to a summary. The first is relevant points. You must get your point, and that's exactly what I did here. That's exactly what I did here. You must get your point, relevant point, annotate your passage, get them out, list them out. And then the next thing I now said is that you must begin with a topic sentence, all right? And then after that, you must utilize complex sentences. So let's look at this. And then I said discuss marker. So let's see how I started. Now, this is actually my response. I said seasonal jobs have both advantages and disadvantages. Now, this is my topic sentence, just so that the examiner understands that I know the focus of the task. Now, look at the way I utilize discuss markers. So my discuss markers are in blue, and then I have underlined, okay, and also written in gray the subordinating conjunction so that you know my complex sentences. So I said first, first is formal. You use first when writing. Firstly is informal. So that's why I said first. First, they do not require prior experience or technical knowledge, although they pay poorly. So that is a complex sentence. The first clause is the dependent clause. They do not require prior experience or technical knowledge. The second clause is the subordinate or dependent clause, which is although they pay poorly. So you must ensure that you utilize complex sentences all through your summary response. So second, they are often perfect for any entry level, even though their lifespan is short. Okay, so anybody can attempt seasonal jobs. However, everybody must know that seasonal jobs have a short time frame. They don't last long because they are seasonal. That's why we say seasonal jobs. In winter, there are jobs, unique to winter. Once winter is over, you don't get those jobs. All right. Meanwhile, they do not genuinely train applicants for the offer, as many learn on the job while missing out on family time, since they take most of the evenings and weekend. Now, that for me is, a very complex sentence, okay? Because in this sentence, you have only one dependent clause, which is they do not genuinely train applicants for the offer, while you have two why you have three, subordinating or dependent clauses, which are as many learn on the job, and you also have one missing out on family time, and you also have since they take most of the evenings and weekends. So you see how, have been able to use subordinating conjunctions, okay, to create complex sentences. The next one says notwithstanding. So you see how I'm using discuss markers to make the entirety of my summary, okay, fluent, okay, coherent, and logical. Notwithstanding, seasonal jobs could be a legitimate source of some extra stipend for personal modest vacationing, although although the extra hours might not count in serious career development, meaning the extra hours you can't really reflect them well on your CV. And if you do it, you must be tactful about it. Lastly, if tactfully reflected on the resume, seasonal jobs could boost job experience and create the right impression as they are easy to come by because they are fitting for every time of the year. All right. So this is my response. I had to develop this just to, so that you have a practical example, and so it's easier for you. All right. I hope, you know, even as we move closer to the end of the year, I hope that this session, okay, has been of great benefit to you. And I hope that I've been able to cover all all vital aspects of your summary. If there are areas you need help with, I'm open to assist you. Are you a student? Are you a teacher? And you think, oh, this is good, but I want a one-on-one with the tutor. My name is Lekon Adigun, and my area of specialty, okay, and my area of expertise, okay, my expertise cut across the first language IGCSE 0500 0990. I equally teach the second language English IGCSE. I also teach literature. I also equally teach the A-level English as well as A-level literature. I also have some students I coach for the International Baccalaureate curriculum. Okay. When it comes to language and literature in IB, all right, I also undo that. And do you have exam prep? Are you preparing for IELTS? Are you preparing for TOEFL? Are you preparing for SAT? Okay. My expertise also cut across this um, curricula. Okay. So if you think you need personalized help, please feel free to contact me. My details is right in my contact details are included in the YouTube channel. You can just check the blog. You would come across my contact. You will see my contact there. All right. I wish you the best. I hope the session has been impactful. All right. I'll see you next time. Bye.